Okay, so I always get asked, what's the difference between these two devices? And I think I actually want to start off with, well, what's similar between these two devices, okay? So this is the RPW2, this is the Mobile2 RPW. So they are actually a little bit different, even in the names. The reason this is an RPW2 is it's the second generation of this particular unit. So similarities. Well, they're both radial pressure wave units. So they both use pneumatic compressed air to be delivered through a tube to make its way to a handle, right? So inside of this handle, there's a valve and it releases that air. It goes down a guide tube that pushes that projectile that actually goes down the guide tube, hits against a transmitter and makes a concussion, right? So that's what's going to release that acoustic energy. So we see that, you know, the hand pieces are going to be very, very similar. Okay, so they both do create an acoustic wave pattern. They both do utilize pneumatic pressure and delivering a projectile. In fact, they use the same projectile. Okay, the guide tubes are a little bit different in terms of length, but they're both generating RPW and they're both actually quite comparable in the energy that they deliver. So for example, if I were to put the R40 transmitter tip on the Falcon handpiece on the RPW2, and you set both of these to one bar, they really should be the same, right? For all intents and purposes. Okay. What else do they do the same? Well, they also have similar parameter settings, which is going to be your intensity, which is set in bar. So bar is just a measure of air. Conversion from PSI, so just a little bit less than 15 PSI. It also has a counter on it, so the number of impulses, and then it also has a frequency setting. So the frequency setting is the number of impulses per second, which is going to be measured in hertz. They both can deliver vibration therapy using that same compressor, okay? So this is the V actor. Now, I can use the V actor that was designed for that unit on this unit, but it doesn't work in both directions, okay? So that's, well, I already jumped ahead to one of the differences. But so they both do create some the vibration therapy using essentially the same technology, okay? What else? Well, they both use the same gel. So ultrasound gel that is also similar to what we're using in diagnostic and therapeutic ultrasound. They also use some of the same transmitters. So there's a set of transmitters that we use for this device. Anything that we use on this device, we can actually use on this device. Okay, but as we'll see, some of the differences are that is not the case in going in the opposite direction. And we'll look at some of those transmitters in a moment. Okay, the delivery, the setup of the protocol, right? Everything else is going to be the same number of impulses, same setup of your patient. So basically going to be very, very similar. So now let's look at some of the differences. Okay, you can probably just look at some of them and sort of pick that up. So let's go look at this guy right here. So this one uses all manual settings, okay? And it's just a screen presentation that shows you, digital screen readout that shows you your parameter settings, right? So I have to go here and turn all that up, and that's going to increase the bar. I manually reset the counter, and it does count down. So they both do count down, and then I have to also change the frequency settings using those particular buttons, okay? This guy, it does have a touch screen to it. So navigation into a lot of the parameter adjustments is actually going to be done on the touch screen. And having that available to us, as well as the internal microprocessor, gives us some other differences. Okay, so some of those differences are, I can have a preset protocol in here. Actually, there are several preset protocols in here. And there's actually an embedded algorithmic program in here that allows us to utilize all of those presets in terms of going by body region and then by indication, okay? At the end of each one of those protocols, after I deliver a treatment, it then gives me a summary. It gives me a summary of whatever it is that I do with the patient, from the bar settings to comfort mode to the number of impulses and even the transmitter tip. So I do have to, manually put in what transmitter tip I use because it doesn't recognize it. But when I put that in there, it does put it into the summary screen of the protocols, and I can save that. So I can then save that either to an assigned shortcut on the device itself, or I can just save that in the custom protocols. So yes, you can create custom protocols and actually save them within the device as well. Another feature that is also related to having the microprocessor system in here is something called comfort mode. So comfort mode is using a ramp effect. So if you're familiar with, say, electrotherapy, to where we have a ramp of, say, 2 seconds when we're delivering NMES, it goes from, the 0 electrical current measured in milliamps up to, let's say you've got it preset at 53 milliamps. It takes 2 seconds to get to that level. So we have a similar patented feature in this device here that setting it on comfort mode allows us to preset, right? So that's another advantage. I can preset all of my parameters in here, and it will go up to whatever those presets are. Okay, so having that preset in there for, and what's different on that one is obviously I'm going to preset the intensity on that, but it basically counts up instead of counting down as far as the number of impulses go, and then frequency is something that I have to change or do manually on both of those devices. So with the presets on this one and that comfort mode, it increases the intensity gradually, and it'll do that over a certain percentage of your setting and the number of impulses. So it's kind of a combination of the two. Actually, the bar setting, the pressure percentage is the same, but we'll see some differences depending on the number of impulses that you're using. So it just allows you to basically introduce the energy a little bit slower into the patient while not having to make any changes. So the device does that automatically, and you don't have to worry about that as the clinician. A couple other things. You'll notice here on the front, we've got 2 ports. So the Mobile2 only has 1 port. So you'd have to disconnect the V actor to put the D actor on, or vice versa. So this one has 2 ports, so you can keep them connected all at the same time. And the machine will recognize that. So in your protocol development, if you're using the algorithm, the SPS, it will give you those options if you have that already attached to the device in terms of some of the things that are available to you in the delivery of that protocol. You'll also see that it's embedded in a cart. So some of the guts are inside here. So a cart is part of the unit. So this is all one unit as it goes to the floor. But you see that the footprint is also significantly smaller than what we see on the mobile. Right, so the mobile does have a handle in the back, and this is it, right? So this is just sitting on a table, so I can move that around, pick it up, and move it around a little bit easier than this guy right here. But very solid, very well built. It transitions easily from room to room and over thresholds and from different flooring materials. Another big difference is that the RPW2 also goes down to 0.3 bar. So it has a lower setting to it that allows us to start with or end with a lower pressure setting. This one goes as low as 1.0 bar. So in those areas or those patients that are really sensitive, depending on what it is you're trying to accomplish, you have a greater opportunity to go to a lower pressure setting on this guy than you do on the mobile unit. Also related to the frequency setting. So this guy on the RPW2 has the capability with the V actor to go up to a much higher frequency than we have on the mobile unit. And then lastly, you see that the handpiece does look a little bit different. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that some of these transmitters can go back and forth, right? The transmitters that I use for the Mobile2 can be used for this guy right here, the RPW2, right? So any of them. But that's not the case with these because we have some differences, okay? So we've got a separate attachment here that allows me to add a couple of different features, a few different features. Put that down right there. So this just screws on, and this allows me to accept some different transmitters. Okay, has a little shock absorber in here, so that actually allows for some resorb of the reverb that you get from some of these other heavier transmitters. So let me show you a couple here. For example, right, spine actors. 3 different sizes, right? So think cervical, thoracic, lumbar spine, or just, you know, larger spine versus smaller spine, depending on the patient. And so these allow us to provide impact, and I can set these in different positions, and it will stay there too, which is kind of cool. Okay, so this allows me to set it into different positions and create an impulse. So what's neat about this over some of my other pieces of equipment is I can really control the frequency. So really the frequency rate, I think, is a really huge feature, in addition to, you know, having the comfort of this guy and controlling and saving all of those parameter settings. And then we've got fascial attachments. Right, so these fascial attachments give us a little bit different opportunity if you are doing some fascial work, right? So as we see with some of our other tools, right, we have different shapes, contours, so depending on what it is that we're trying to accomplish with the patient. So we've got some different attachments, scoops, glides, rolls, so that way we can deliver what we're doing with some of our other types of devices, now using a pneumatic device and delivering very high frequency rates, but essentially letting the device do all the work for us, and again allowing me to save that information and put it into a very neat package that makes it easier to record all of that information. All right, so I think that's about it. I mean, obviously the dials are a little bit different, but mostly it's the interface is very different. But the exceptional additional accessories that we see on this guy too really lend itself to, you know, being a little bit more diverse than this guy over here.